Welcome to Type C Tech Reviews. Today we're going to be doing a review of the Corsair Xeneon Flex 45WQHD240. At any point during the video you want to check out this exact same monitor, there's Amazon links below for the US, UK, Canada, and international links. But let's jump into it. All right, now firstly, this is an LG panel. So Corsair designed, I think, the stand and everything else that goes around it and the flexing part, but the panel is an LG panel, which is the same panel as the LG 45GR95QE-B. That is a large name. And it is also effectively the same panel technology, and well, the specs turn out to be basically exactly the same, which is what I expected, to the smaller LG 27GR95QE-B. So if you did see my review on that, well, it's basically the same. And because of that, I'm not going to be covering all of the specs because I did all of the tests and it's essentially exactly the same. The panel is, well, effectively exactly the same with slight differences. And that's what we're gonna be talking about. All of the stuff specific to this panel and the Corsair Flex itself. So if you want the specs and all the tests and things such as that, go check out my LG 27GR95QE-B review. I'll have it in the description below or at the end of the video, but let's talk about the monitor. Firstly, the ports. On this Corsair monitor, there are a ton of ports, and I really appreciate that. Having two HDMI 2.1s, one DisplayPort 1.4, one display USB Type-C, one USB Type-C upstream port, and then two USB Type-A downstream. Now, all of these ports are stacked vertically, which is interesting, on the rear of the stand of the monitor. Now, this makes it actually quite hard to get to because the monitor is huge and you have to reach literally to the farthest and lowest point back. However, the flip side to this is you don't have to do any cable management at all because the stand is very, very wide. And if you have your cables just going straight back and down, there's literally no cable management. So after you get it set up, it looks super clean. So I really like that. But from the front of the stand, there are more ports, which are two more USB Type-A's, a 3.5mm audio out, an input switch button, an on and off button, and lastly, the menu system joystick controller. This is super convenient for plugging things in and out, like charging headsets or plugging in something to the 3.5mm audio jack. It's really, really great. Also, it's easy to see the power button, whether it's on or off, and just very quick to turn it on and off because it's an OLED. The only thing I don't like here is the 5 gigabits per second like sticker logo, the white printing that's next to the USBs. But besides that, this is really, really functional and I really like that. So Corsair did a great job here. Okay, but let's talk the Flex part. Obviously, that's the biggest thing with this panel and the biggest reason you may be getting the Corsair Flex. It can switch from a flat display to an 800R curved display. Now, I highly recommend you check out my unboxing video of this, which is my first impressions and unboxing of the monitor, because I think that video actually really captures how very cool it is when you first get this out of the box and you start going from flat to curved. It's honestly shocking. Obviously, you do get used to it fairly quickly, and I don't think it's as usable in this display itself, but in the future, this kind of technology and putting this in more monitors could be incredibly good, especially for a creative space. All right, so to get this to curve, there's two handles. You kind of press them in and then they will pull out. And then you just literally pull it towards you or push it away and it will be fully locked out or fully curved or fully flat when you hear this kind of loud snap, which doesn't sound as scary as I made it sound. And it actually works very, very well. The only thing here is that you do need quite a bit of force, especially more force when you get to the ends, either almost totally flat and almost totally curved. So if a 10 or 11-year-old is doing this, I don't think they would be quite capable of, well, pulling them at the same force and then maybe being able to quite make them go fully curved or fully flat. Although you don't actually need to, you can have it be slightly curved as much as you want. So that's actually a very cool part of this. However, this is $2,000. That's the MSRP, and the handles feel a little cheap. They like jiggle. They don't feel like they're gonna break, but they like jiggle like they're loose. For $2,000, probably would like to see something, well, the build quality on those just be a little bit better, but that's the only part where the build quality is not good because on every other part of this monitor, it is very good. Now, I've actually lived with this monitor far longer than I've lived with almost all the other monitors I reviewed, including the 27-inch OLED, the LG monitor. So I do kind of have a long-term test review process with this one. And because of that, I have a little bit more data that I can give, which is the flip side to having the bendable display is that at this point, most of the time I was using it in the curved mode. And because of that, now when it is pressed flat, it doesn't stay perfectly flat like it did when I took it out of the box. Now, I don't see any issues with wear or having it harder or easier to pull into place. So I think that's good. It does seem like it would last a long time, but the display no longer is perfectly flat. From the front, when it is flat, you don't really notice it, but when you look at the sides, and you'll probably be able to see in the B-roll, it is definitely not flat. All right, now the next big difference between the 27-inch OLED from LG and this panel is the PPI, the resolution, the PPI. Now, PPI stands for pixels per inch. It's essentially how crisp and clear the image of the monitor is actually going to appear to your eye. Now, this has the same standard resolution as a 34-inch ultrawide, and this being a 44.5-inch ultrawide, that's a lot more screen with the same resolution, which is 3440 by 1440p. This brings the PPI to about 84 pixels per inch. That is quite low, especially when spending this much money. However, let's talk about how it is. So is it super noticeable? Well, obviously this depends on how close you're sitting to this, but even with a fairly long throw, sitting a little bit further back than you might with other monitors, yeah, it's very noticeable. And there's a bigger problem with this on desktop. So because of the different sub-pixel layout, there is fringing, text fringing. It's essentially where you can see a magenta and a green color that is essentially separating from text. That's where it's most noticeable, although you should be able to see this on more than just text, but that's where it's most noticeable. But because the PPI is lower, that means the pixels are essentially larger, it is even more noticeable now on this panel than it was on the 27-inch. So for any sort of creative work, or any sort of content creation, Photoshop, anything like that, or even just typing out paper without any background software adjustments or any go-between program or any fix like that, if you're just using this in stock form on Windows, there is really bad fringing. And it's super noticeable because of the PPI. Now, in game, you're like never gonna notice this ever, so that's a non-issue if you're just using this for gaming. But again, then it doesn't really make sense why you'd want it to fold flat and then be curved. All right, but now let's talk brightness. I did go over brightness in the 27-inch review. However, everything is still the same. It's pretty much the same here. It's very, very low brightness, but then it does fluctuate. So if you're on desktop, most of the time in most situations, you're gonna see about 200 nits, which is very, very dim. Most of your light sources need to be off or closed. And it's not a super enjoyable experience. But these OLEDs do change brightness constantly and do explain it in simple terms, not making it overcomplicated. If most of your screen is a bright white color or close to a bright white, the screen is going to dim to around that 200 nits or a little bit below. However, if most of the screen is a darker color, like maybe more greens or more blues or browns or colors like that, then it's going to push it to the highest brightness. Now the problem here, and I did see this on the 27-inch, and I think I did mention in that review, but all of the brightness changes are more noticeable because obviously it is a ginormous screen. On a TV with the brightness changing, that's like a non-issue, especially because most of the time you're gonna be watching movies. But playing on a PC, a monitor, it has some issues. The brightness changes very, very quickly. It does not fade into a new brightness, it snaps into a new brightness. Now the problem with this is, well, one of the most annoying times this happened was in the new game, The Sons of the Forest. I was swimming in water, going to shore, and because the sky was filling up half the screen and the water was filling up the other half, because I was bobbing through the water, the screen couldn't decide if it was going to be dim or if it was going to be bright. So it was violently flashing between bright and dim and bright and dim and bright and dim, so much so that it gave me a slight headache. And it was super annoying, something that when you're spending this amount of money, you don't really want. As well as the fact that I really just don't like displays that change brightness. No one likes adaptive brightness, and if you do, you're probably not gaming because that's very strange, but I'm gonna let that up to you if that's an issue for you or not. It was not a pleasant experience for me, but I'm gonna let you come to your own conclusions there. But the biggest problem across all of these OLEDs from LG is the matte finish. It is a very intense matte finish. I do want to make this point. Not all matte finishes are created equal. There are more intense and less intense ones. Some of them are a non-issue. It would obviously be better for picture quality to have no matte finish, but some of them are not bad at all, and some of them are truly atrocious. this is still the worst matte finish I've ever seen on a monitor before. It is so thick. It's absolutely crazy that LG put this on there. And this is the one reason that I would not buy this for personal usage. If it didn't have this, I would probably forgive a bunch of the other issues because it would probably look unbelievably beautiful, but it ruins the OLEDness of it. Yes, you're getting the deep blacks, but every other part of your screen, you notice this oil slick, oily, dirty screen effect everywhere, even when in game. Many times with matte finishes that aren't too bad, in game you never really notice them. With this one, it's almost like you're looking before the image. So you're kind of seeing a film over your image. It just looks terrible during gameplay, which is, it's so distracting. The point of an OLED, especially a big one like this, which is not really an esports monitor because it is an ultra wide, so that doesn't make sense to do esports gaming, the matte finish is absolutely terrible. Now, this is not Corsair's fault, and I do want to give credit where credit is due. Every part that Corsair did to this monitor is done extremely well, which makes me very excited to see more monitors that they work on. The stand is quite good. While it doesn't have adjustability besides tilt, it is extremely solid and stable, made with a lot of metal. I already said how good the front-facing ports are, but the menu system is also Corsair's, which is controlled with their joystick, and there are no real problems at all. Yes, it's not as good as LG's, it's not quite as pretty, but it is just as functional and, well, quick to get to everything. So there's no problems there. So overall, would I recommend this? With all its faults, if this had a glossy finish, I probably still would. But the matte finish combined with all the other issues that this panel has, I don't personally think that it's a great value for $2,000. But the bendable display is pretty awesome. So if you really like OLEDs, I could definitely see why one might buy this if they have large amounts of disposable income. All that being said, if you're deciding between the LG version of this display that is non-bendable and the Corsair version of this display, which is bendable, which is the one I've been talking about today, I would probably say this one is more worth it. The Corsair one is more worth it because it's so cool and it's only around $300 more. I mean, obviously that depends if it's worth it or not to you, but having it be able to bend, it's a gimmicky thing. But if you're someone who's buying an OLED, the first gaming OLEDs that are monitors out there, you probably have a bit of disposable income and it's pretty cool to just mess around with. So if you're the type of person buying this monitor, you probably have the money to spend $300 more. So that's what I think. Again, if you want to check it out, Amazon links below for the US, UK, Canada, and international links. At this point, with a monitor that I usually don't recommend, I would usually give you a recommendation that you could look at if you do listen to my recommendations. However, there's no real other OLEDs out there, and definitely not any 45-inch 800R curved OLEDs out there for sure. So possibly the Samsung ultrawide, I think it was the G8. I've been on vacation for a few weeks, so I'm not 100% caught up with that, but maybe look into that one. But yeah, this is Type-C Tech Reviews. Let me know what you think below. I love reading the comments, especially on monitors like this. I love hearing everyone's different opinion. And I do also want to mention, if you want to buy this monitor, just because I said I don't recommend it, doesn't mean that you won't enjoy it. It's totally up to you. It's totally up to personal preference. Everyone loves different things in monitors. So if you want this and you have the money, you should absolutely buy it if that's what's going to make you happy. All right, this is Type-C Tech Reviews, and I'll see you guys in the next video.